So here we get to the big wall of close, or the big close wall. Excuse me. So again, you see this actually is a little more evident because they're using quite a bit more paper pulp in these squares, and so it's building. There's the colors are in higher relief here, but you can really see where he's getting in there and manipulating that surface. What's so cool about it too is here where this does seem to be somewhat, you know, like removed from the surface where I'm relying on the process. Here you get to see the evidence of his hand. And when I was at Davidson College, we had the great pleasure of having a large-scale Rodin bronze, which, you know, I think the show just closed today. Oftentimes in Rodin's work you see his hand. It's one of the many reasons he's referred to as the father of modernism, is the fact that when at the time he was breaking new ground, you know, showing your hand, that was a big no-no in that particular tradition. But he wanted to show that physicality. He wanted his movements to express something much deeper than burnishing down the marble or refining the bronze to a high finish. So this actually, and it just occurred to me today, you know, standing here looking at it for the first time, is that whereas we could go with our students up to the Rodin and say, okay, if you take your hand and you lay it into his shoulder right here, that's where his hand was. And so you're reducing the span of, say, 130 years, you know, to nothing, because you're right there in that moment, right there in that gesture. So you see here, you get that evidence, which of course, you know, I love. I'm such a big fan of drawings and works on paper, and it's where you start to see the way that the artist is thinking. And I think this is very evident of it too. And I just love the kind of the tug and the pull and the dynamic surface that this kind of approach creates. But you know, this is pretty good too. Now, I'm not going to talk about the spit bite technique just yet, because I want to wait I have to confess, one of my favorite images is Phil Spitbite up in the High Art Gallery, so we'll kind of wait on that. But as you can see, you know, he's always continuing to turn the camera on himself, right? So if we look at the first piece that we stopped at upstairs, the big color silk screen, he's smiling, you know, he's kind of hunched down a little bit, he's looking up a little bit. You can see this evolution of his examination of himself. You know, the hair gets thinner, the beard gets shabbier, the glasses change, but I think it's very telling of the way in which he continues to look to himself as a source, which, you know, artists have done over the ages. And if there's an artist that's never ever produced a self-portrait, I can't help but think that art is always somewhat autobiographical, because it comes from such a place that's inexplicable in terms of where one draws one's inspiration or their motivation or whatever. This is very much in keeping with a tradition, but all the time pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. You see here, you begin to see a little bit more of that three-quarter profile here, turning the grid on a 45 as he did here, cropping in here to create a more compressed, confined feeling in that piece. And then here is one of the more recent paper pulp pieces. This one is from 2001, and this will become a little more evident when we get over to the Georgia paper pulp piece. But you can see how far he's come in terms of thinking about using the paper pulp as a medium to express and build up an image. No longer do we have the grid, but there's very much a system in this particular piece, beginning with a black field of paper pulp, and then using a series of mylar screens, not using the dimensional grids this time and templates, but using very thin mylar screens that are cut out in very specific areas. You'll see that in the Lichtenstein video upstairs. Building from the darkest values up to the lightest values, like the highlights here in the glasses and on the nose and here. And so this might be about a 9-color step process here, right?